There we go. Hi, welcome, Brooke. I'm Joanne Yanke. I am the creator of the fertility program Align Creation. I am consciousbirth.ca as well as wombvalley.com. So I'm so pleased to have you as a guest for us on the Align Creation program as a little guest hub, but we'll probably share this recording publicly anyways. So as an extra bonus to the world for the amazing stuff that we can do to support the women trying to conceive and the families that are trying to be built in this world. So for me, this conversation is really not about doing fertility better. It's really about understanding what the body actually needs to open physically, emotionally, biologically to create this new life. And what I've really recognized is that so many women arrive at fertility already depleted, nutritionally, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, because we live in a system that doesn't support wellness, and we carry so much burden and so much weight. And so I wanted to look at this from a lens of nourishment, not just food, but for safety and regulation and receptivity as well. So I know your practice has been very successful in helping to bring some babies into this world. Will you tell me about what your approach is and how that's,
Yeah, certainly. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm looking forward to having this conversation. I think our approaches align in a lot of ways, as my approach is certainly to help create more safety and nourishment in the body as well. And I work with couples, as you know, it takes two to have that healthy baby, and I got into this line of work from very personal story and hormonal health and cycle health and autoimmune conditions. Eventually led me down the road to helping others, using nutrition strategically to nourish their bodies and learning how to help couples tune into that and find what they really need. So I do a little bit of investigative work with my couples, initially just to learn more about where their bodies are at and what barriers are getting in the way of how their body is able to support reproduction. And I see fertility as the very energy intensive process that it is. And, that energy can definitely come from emotional and mental places, but we have to use that nutrition foundation also to support just creation of energy in the cells and making sure we have enough resources on board to support everything from egg quality and sperm quality to really every piece of the fertility puzzle, conception and implantation, and then being able to support the nourishment of that tiny human throughout pregnancy also. So I see nutrients and food as a big foundation of that energy.
Yeah, I like the saying, you can't build a Ferrari from Ford parts. And so if you're just eating garbage, you're not going to be able to build very good, healthy little cells in your little life that you're building.
Exactly. Yes, that is so true. And as you mentioned, in opening, couples are very depleted when they're getting to the stage of reproduction. So we replete a lot from the nutrition side of things too, to give them those building blocks.
Yeah, we need those building blocks. And so it's really how it's not about perfection. It's about consistency. It's about safety. It's about rebuilding everything and not forcing anything, but just allowing the system to receive the nutrition. And I think a big part of it for a lot of people is also a lack of absorption as well, wouldn't it be?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, we can definitely see a very important balance of making sure that we're eating enough and choosing a lot of the most nutrient dense foods to be supportive for reproduction. But if the gut is not functioning in a way, it's not really in a place to break down and digest and absorb those foods, it doesn't really matter what you're eating. I mean, it does. It still plays a role, but it's not going to get the full benefit if we're not digesting and absorbing those foods fully. So we do a lot of microbiome testing in our practice, just learning more about the bacteria in the gut, which plays a big role in that breakdown and digestion and absorption of that food, which gives us those building blocks of the vitamins and minerals that are really what are functioning at the cellular level to produce that energy.
Yeah. As a body talk practitioner, we work in body psychology, body consciousness, and recognizing that the body and the mind are so interrelated and interconnected. And so we know so much from science now in the gut-brain connection, right? And so the stress in the gut and the mental health and all of those levels and how well they're linked together. There's so much research there now.
It is so fascinating too. And we talk a lot about how we eat as being just as important as what you are fueling your body with. So if you're in a stress state, moving quickly throughout your day, you're trying to shove some food in because you know you need to, your gut's not going to respond the same way because your brain is in a fight or flight mode, and that rest and digest system is not going to receive that food in the same way, and you're not going to be digesting and absorbing or getting the benefits of that, those building blocks that you're working towards. So yeah, that gut brain connection is so important for sure.
It makes me think of somebody I know personally. Through their pregnancy, they were told they needed to be on the brewer's diet and have all the high protein and eat all the eggs and all the different stuff. And her child ended up, and she hated it and it was stressful, and she forced herself to eat the stuff anyways. And then her child ended up being allergic to all of those things because the child resonated with those stress responses. And so even at a preconception level, right, of what we're building into our eggs and into our sperm, and the energetics of that is just fascinating.
Absolutely. Eating or trying to eat is causing stress. It's definitely going to have a opposite effect on what you're working towards as far as nourishment and safety for egg quality and time to conception.
So I have an interesting question for you. Is you noticed any patterns, particularly with the women that are trying to do everything right and are just really trying to force the process? Have you noticed any patterns there?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say a large percentage of the women that I work with are that type A personality, trying to control things and do things just so. And it's really that kind of letting go and working on trusting the process and tuning in to what your body's asking for that helps move the needle more than the trying to control. There's so much that we still don't know about fertility, if we're being honest. But what we do know is that if you're not able to create that calm and safe and nourished environment, the body's not feeling safe enough to send resources to reproduction. It's trying to keep you safe because it feels like it's running from a lion, as I like to say. It's in that fight or flight mode because it feels like every mealtime, there's a lot of stress happening, and the body doesn't necessarily understand why, because stress happens. That response is the same whether you are actually running from a lion or if you're just stressed over what you're eating, for instance. Yes, I definitely see patterns there.
Which is exactly what my program is designed to support, is to feel more at ease and more at peace and to work. I have my free masterclass that I teach is working with identity and action. If we're taking too much action, we take ourselves out of safety, but we can also have the stresses at the level of identity and like letting go of career and letting go of shifts in our relationships, and how those identity patterns can also really impact fertility and create so much fear of change. We're so afraid of change. We like things to be familiar in so many ways. Yeah.
That's so interesting. Yes, I know I've had clients that have finally worked to a point to leave their jobs and their careers, and it's made a huge difference on their reproduction outcomes. think really thinking really hard about your priorities and what is most important for you is something that's so necessary before you're even getting pregnant, because it's not going to get easier once baby arrives.
Yeah. And so it's all from this lens of like, how is our body protecting us? Because there's always a secondary gain. There's always a reason why your body is putting the brakes on, is because it wants to protect you. And so it's always just fascinating to work with that. And so, so what is your view here on like the stress in the nervous system, even when their nutrition is looking good on paper? We've kind of discussed this a little bit already, but if you wanted to go a little more on that.
Yeah, I would say the majority of the couples that are coming to me have tried all of the different like eating patterns and worked on, improving their diets as a whole. And so a lot of times, how they're eating is looking good in general. But when we really work on doing some more investigative work as far as looking deeper at blood work markers or digging deeper into the gut health piece, it's not right for them. It's not right for where their bodies are at. So a lot of times we're tweaking things. Well, all of the time we're tweaking how they're eating in response or to what that testing is telling us, and even what their symptoms are telling us. And we do a lot of cycle tracking and symptom tracking, or cycle sign tracking also, that can give us a lot of insight to just how the body's communicating and what nutritionally can be helpful. So one of the tests that I run is called an HTMA, a hair tissue mineral analysis test, and that gets really deep into mineral status at a cellular level. So it's actually looking at the minerals that are inside of our cells. So we can't look at that very holistically from a blood standpoint. So when we learn that information, we get a lot more guidance for how to shift the diet and support the nervous system in order to allow for those building blocks to be used more appropriately. So when we're looking at that mineral status, the nervous system piece is huge, because if we work on adding in all of the minerals that are depleted, but we're not working on the nervous system side of the puzzle, you're going to continue to deplete them because your body is using them really quickly under that fight or flight nervous system state, that stressed nervous system state. And you're not going to be able to shuttle them towards reproduction or have enough left over to also support fertility as a whole. So even if the diet is looking great in general, there's always barriers that we uncover via testing, and the nervous system always has to be a piece of that puzzle too. It can be tricky to figure out how to work that in for a lot of people, especially if we're talking about career-driven women. Which is definitely speaking to the little bit we talked about previously. Yep, there can be some really hard decisions to make if we're not seeing the results that are expected based on their day-to-day life. Yeah.
Yeah, and just the idea that pregnancy isn't something we do, it's something we open up to receive, right? It's in a state where we don't really have any control, and trying to control just keeps making it worse.
Mm-hmm.
We see that all the time, right? The people that decide to, give up and adopt or then they go and get pregnant, right? When we let go of the control and we let go of that. And that's really that big piece that I like to work with people on. And what does like a really sustainable sort of like fertility diet realm look like in a real life terms for people? Because, and I'm sure it looks differently for everybody, but I don't know.
Yeah. So eating pattern plays a role. So we don't want to be fasting, for instance. We don't want to wait hours and hours after we're waking up to eat our first meal. And that is definitely not supportive for the vast majority of women who are working on reproductive health. So we see that we can actually support our nervous system in pretty big ways if we're eating within about an hour of that wake window. And it doesn't even have to be a perfect meal, but just providing that nourishment at that time can be so helpful for the safety cues that it provides the body. And then working on eating fairly consistently throughout the day. So not going, 8 hours before your next meal. And this can get a little bit more specific based on if there's insulin resistance concerns or anything like that. But generally, we're thinking about every 4-ish hours that we're having some more nourishment, that we're supporting that natural circadian rhythm response that happens throughout the day to support that sleep quality at night. And making sure that we're not saving all of our calories for nighttime, because that can also disrupt, nighttime sleep, that rest and repair period, which is so helpful for all of the pieces of reproduction also. So consistent eating pattern makes a big difference in nourishment and safety. Signaling from nutrition, and then how you're eating also, as I mentioned. So if you are one to rush through meals, taking pause, working on taking some deep breaths before you eat. We're working on shifting that nervous system state into a rest and digest mode to support the digestion, and just how you're receiving that food. So deep breathing prior to eating, slowing down, chewing your food well, and giving your body time to enjoy that meal makes a difference as well for just how you're receiving and able to use those foundational pieces from what you're eating. And then the third thing I would say is focusing on what you can add in. So getting away from that restrictive mindset around eating can be really helpful. Like tuning into your body and asking it like what it needs, which can take a whole lot of practice and a huge mindset shifts to be able to get there. But then think about adding. So maybe you're adding a fruit or another vegetable or some fiber or protein, which can definitely get more specific on just where your body is starting and what your needs are. But work on that mindset shift of what can I add versus like what do I have to avoid or what do I have to take out for fertility?
I'm really glad you brought in that idea of asking your body what it needs, because that's my whole process is that we're intuitive when we know, and if we're craving something, there's intelligence in that. So I really love that piece, and that's part of why my program is structured to be just a little bit every single day, because it gets you to tune in a little bit every day and start to learn that intuitive and that process of rewiring the nervous system and the safety, and really that ability to tune in and to connect with ourselves in that deeper way, which a one and done doesn't do.
Right. Yes. It takes time, takes process. Yeah. I feel like we're culturally and wired in a way to have more heightened nervous system for so many reasons. And I think that restriction and that like working against our intuitive thoughts and feelings is kind of a really big negative side effect of that.
And just, the magic pill, the quick fix without working to fix the underlying issues and the problems, especially as we get into like Ozempic and different things, right? Of like, let's just stop ourselves from eating and not, address the underlying patterns to why we have the weight in the first place, right? For that example.
Exactly.
Yeah, like that's my biggest thing is always to get curious of like, why is this symptom showing up? Why is this here? And there's always a deeper story asking to be heard in that. And so I noticed in your post around veganism, so protein and fats being a big building block. Do you want to speak to that?
Certainly, yes. We are biologically designed to need fat and proteins. And plant proteins can be supportive, but animal proteins are way more bioavailable. They are way easier for our bodies to use, to both digest and break down, and then just use at a cellular level too, because there are different forms of vitamins and minerals even when we're looking at plant versus animal foods. And there can be these activation processes that have to happen metabolically before a nutrient is actually used to support DNA programming or actual energy creation at the cellular level. And so when nutrients are less bioavailable, we don't get as much benefit from them because of the errors in processing and just the decreased amount as a whole that we're getting of each nutrient from a given food. So your animal proteins are more bioavailable, just way easier to use. And those protein building blocks are playing really big roles in egg quality and sperm quality and lining health. And when we think about fats literally make up our cells, the walls of our cells. They are really important building blocks for our hormones as well. So the types of fats that we're eating makes a big difference as to what's happening with cell health and hormone health as well. So really important things to get enough of consistently. I am not a fan of vegan eating for female or male fertility for those reasons. We see in the research irreversible developmental outcomes in baby from our vegan moms, which can be really hard to hear, I think, for people that have gone that lifestyle or towards that eating pattern. But I would really encourage you to take a really hard look and think about why you navigated that direction initially. And there's some really great resources on, planet health and animal health and well-being that will likely change your mind and allow you to welcome in some more like animal foods. And it can be life-changing for you as well as for the family that you're working on building.
Absolutely. As we're talking about bioavailability, so we know that we're designed to absorb and take in food and not chemical processed things. So you want to speak a little bit towards supplements?
Yes. So there's a time and place for supplementation, but we need to be really aware of where we're choosing to purchase our supplements and how many supplements that we are taking also. So the diet, like nutrition and the lifestyle foundations, are going to move the needle for you more than any one supplement will. And remembering that no pill, even if it is supplemental, is going to be magic at shifting your reproduction. But that's definitely where the deeper dive testing and learning more about where your body is at and what it might need more of can be really helpful too, because we can get really specific about what supplements are going to be best for filling in the gaps. But you have to think of it as filling in the gaps of what you're changing nutritionally and lifestyle wise. And there are some fantastic quality, very highly tested and regulated supplements out there, but that's not the norm. They have to go out of their ways, and the company has to go out of their way and do that testing, choose to do that testing because they're not being told that they need to. Supplements are widely unregulated, unfortunately. So being aware of that is really important. And we shouldn't be focusing on supplements as a first line foundation by any means.
Yeah, and there are some good ones out there that are like whole food concentrates that like I love Sunrider for that, and it's not one that's widely known, but it's all Chinese like herbal stuff. And so on the concept of herbs, I know like ashwagandha, I probably pronounced it wrong, but there's a few different herbs that are, you know, touted as being like the miracle herbs, right?
Yeah.
Is that a realm that you work with in your practices in the herbology and or not?
Yeah, yep, we do incorporate them fairly often, especially for gut changes and supporting that mucosal lining, where we're doing a lot of support versus like antibiotics or anything like that. We're bringing in herbal support as a whole. As a whole, they can be great antimicrobials. So there, if there's like a lot of overgrowth or things in the gut that we want to be shifting, short protocols of herbal combinations can be a really great option. But that's always with that foundation of the nutrition piece too, because that's how we're going to maintain things longer term also, as well as the lifestyle pieces there. And we definitely use the most common supplements that we're using are actually like antioxidant based to really support egg quality and sperm quality, but also just decreasing oxidative stress and damage as a whole in the body to make sure that we're protecting DNA damage as much as possible. Of course, in combination with the food piece.
Yeah, I was working with a naturopath pre-conception to my second child, and I think it was called Methyl Guard to work with the MTHFR realm of that. I know there's lots of more stuff coming up about the inability to absorb toxins and different things if you have that genetic predisposition, and how we can protect our kids there.
Yeah, certainly. Certainly. And there's so much genetically that we don't even know about and don't know how to test for too. So I always take the route of, supporting our overall detox pathways, making sure that our supplements that we are taking are highly bioavailable, already methylated, but in combinations that aren't going to lead to like anxiety. Over methylation can definitely lead to symptoms too. If we're doing like too much supplementing of like methylated nutrients, but they can definitely be supportive also. So finding that balance if somebody's having negative side effects from them is important. But also knowing that nutrients work together. So if you're trying to take like just vitamin D, for instance, and not seeing any changes in your lab markers, it's probably because it doesn't have the nutrient buddies to support it. So making sure that if you are seeing those barriers, thinking about adding to your support team to work out those details as far as how nutrients are working together, what you can do nutritionally or lifestyle wise to better support those shifts.
Beautiful. That's amazing. You definitely have a lot to bring to the world. I really appreciate your wisdom here. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to close with? I don't know if I had any more questions for you.
I would just kind of mirror what you have been saying regarding safety and nourishment in the body. Just remember that fertility is not supported by pressure or perfection. Moving out of trying to have the perfect diet and control fertility through nutrition that way can be really challenging, but it can definitely be so supportive in your overall outcomes. So not being afraid to add to your support team and make sure you're getting the support that you so deserve, because it's not only going to help you in this stage of trying to conceive or pregnancy, it's definitely going to trickle down to the tiny humans that you're working on bringing into the world.
Oh, I do remember there was one thing that popped up a moment ago as we're talking about methylation is some of the new interesting conversations I've been seeing about trying to prevent tongue ties and lip ties and the methylation realm of, over the neural tube and such things. So do you know anything about that?
Yeah, certainly. So I actually have a really big research heavy blog on my website all about MTHFR and folic acid versus folate. And then it does talk about things like tongue ties. Also, so we see folate is one, it's like the tip of the iceberg when we're talking about the MTHFR mutation, and a lot of other nutrients are involved in that, even ones like choline, and then minerals like zinc and magnesium, vitamin A, like they're all involved in that process. So if there are SNPs or variations in our body that are not allowing us to break down and use these nutrients appropriately, it's going to cause various side effects depending on how much you're getting and when during pregnancy. So development of baby is definitely being impacted, even during that 4 weeks prior to conception, because that's when that programming is happening, even inside that egg and inside that follicle. And then the nutrients that are on board by the time you conceive makes a difference, and then so on and so forth. Week after week, it's going to impact the rapidly developing cells and genetic makeup of that baby. So nutrients are a big deal, and stress plays a big role, whether it's internal stressors or external stressors, and how we're using certain nutrients. And we don't have to know every genetic little snip that is possible to know that whole food and balance and safety in the body is ultimately going to win out in supporting overall outcomes as far as development goes. But it's definitely something to be aware of. I still have a lot of reproductive endocrinologists that are really heavily pushing folic acid, which is a synthetic version of folate. And even though we know that over half of our population has is the inability to use and fully break down folic acid, those recommendations are still out there, and I don't see them going away anytime soon. So if you're learning about new information around folic acid, folate, just MTHFR as a whole, tune in, because there's a lot of really good, reliable research out there on it, and the protocol has not been shifted. And it honestly, it takes an average of 17 years before the conventional medical world changes their protocols around anything. So
as a doula and a birth worker, I see that quite, the evidence of what they're practicing doesn't match the evidence that we have in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it can be so frustrating, but keep asking questions, stay curious, and don't be afraid of going against what a provider may be suggesting if it doesn't feel right.
Especially with nutrition, because our doctors get maybe an hour of nutritional education in their med school years.
Maybe,
so they don't know anything about it. And especially like as an infant sleep educator, they, recommending, cry it out sleep training, which is not evidence-based at all. And it's like, we try to listen to these doctors that don't have any training in those or extra knowledge in these areas. And so we have to really ask, is like, where are these people speaking from? Is it just their own ideas, or do they actually know what they're talking about?
Right. Yeah. So important.
All right. Safety. That is the biggest key here. Attunement, connection, ability to know and understand, and just what I have discovered is the answer for everything is coherence, which is where we don't feel fragmented, where one part isn't arguing with another part. And that's our answer, is to be in that state of coherence. And so
yes,
it's the biggest piece that I've realized is our answer here is we need to have all of our parts communicating and working together and not overriding each other. So that is our biggest thing. This was very beautiful, Brooke. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll have this part of our class hub for Aligned Creation, as well as, we'll get this one shared to you so you can share it as well to wherever you want to stick it. So beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great conversation.